Testing, testing. All right. About time, huh?
Plan on proposing is more about kind of managing the vegetation.
Howdy, neighbor. All right, ready? All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. This is Spencer Kellum from K2 Environmental. He has spent some significant time on the property and done a pretty extensive survey of both the topography and the tree and growth that's left. And he's going to go ahead and do about a 45-minute presentation for you. And then after that, we'll open up the floor to questions, comments, concerns. And just so everybody knows, Kelly Van Marter at the back, our township manager. And we have Amy Ruthig, our planner, and Greg Tatara, the utilities director, also hanging out at the back. And then we have Trustee Hovarder and Trustee Valente joining us tonight. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Spencer.
Cool, thank you.
Enjoy the presentation.
There we go. Mic check. Cool. Does this pick me up from here? Do I need to? I might need to hold it. Okay. Hello. Here we go. Cool. Well, thank you all. Yeah, appreciate you all coming out today. I'm Spencer Kellum. I'm with K2 Environmental Consulting. I do a lot of different types of native habitat restoration work and business strategic planning for nature for different businesses and corporates. And I had the privilege of being able to kind of come out and look at this property and develop a plan for how to kind of send it into the future. So what I have planned for us today is I'm going to kind of go through what I did, the environmental assessment of the property. I'm going to talk you through and walk you through a variety. It's a very challenging property with a lot of different things going on. And so trying to bring everybody up to speed on what has happened here. And that is kind of serving as the foundation for what I'm proposing in terms of restoration and kind of the path forward for things. So, cool. So I've got an agenda. So real quick, we'll start with just an introduction and an overview of the project. So a little bit why I'm here and what I did and what I'm doing. It includes an environmental assessment, going through a bit of the historic land use and talking through some of the challenges related to what's happened here. Going into the restoration plan, talking through different ecosystem types, different management techniques, these sorts of things, and different target ecosystems where we might try to take these things. So, and then at the end, we'll do a little questions and discussions and then talk through the next steps. So I do want to encourage you, if you do have a question that's pertinent as I'm going, please do ask a question, because I'm going to be showing a lot of maps and a lot of, throwing a lot of information at you. So if something's not clear, please do speak up. So just before we go into, I'm going to try this thing out. Yeah.
Restoration plan leads me to believe that the decision is made what's going to happen to it. I would think like restoration options.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like that you guys have decided what the plans will be.
That's a fair question. I think I am proposing this as the plan. So I think I was hired by the township to go through, assess it, come up with a plan, what I would recommend doing, and then at the end of this, one of the final products is a plan. And so I think part of what I'm trying to accomplish here tonight is garner feedback. If something's off, or you have suggestions and different ideas, I'm gonna take that home with me and work it into the final plan. So we're by no means, I haven't written the plan, so this is the presentation to get a lot of those ideas vetted. I want to just, before I move on to the next slide, I want to point out this picture on the right here. That is a kind of a prairie savanna ecosystem in southern Michigan that's from my family's farm that we restored. Probably I helped plant it as a 6-year-old, so 20, 30 years ago. But this is a kind of a model for some of the areas on this property. So the idea of open grown trees. You can see in the foreground there's some young trees starting to come up with largely grasses and forbs around it. So just kind of give you a little mental picture of some of the things that I'm going to be proposing. So, right. So real quick about me, why I'm here. I've got I'm an environmental consultant. I've worked in a lot of states and across the U.S. and I've worked in the United Kingdom as well. I've got some education that's pertinent, and then I've worked on a lot of, like I said, I've done probably 20 to 30 different styles of restorations. So taking bare farmland, planting prairies. I've done wetland restorations, removing invasive species, reestablishing hydrology, trying to regain the native plants. I've done a fair bit of just forest management, timber stand improvements, that sort of thing. So worked for a lot of other people, and then when I was working over in the UK as a business nature strategy consultant, so I was working with some major corporations on their nature strategies. So when my wife and I moved back to southern Michigan, we live over in the Irish Hills south of Jackson, I formed K2 Environmental Consulting as a way of better serving local townships and private landowners in my area and in Michigan, just to recognize there's natural resources and conservation is a pretty important topic. It plays into a lot of community decisions, and oftentimes townships and organizations don't have specialists on staff, so I can help guide and advise. And so that's part of the reason why I'm here today is to offer natural resource and conservation planning. So I do work with private landowners. Soft pitch to any of you if you've got big forest you're trying to work through. I could probably help you with it, but that's not why we're here today. So today, this is just the overall project that I've been working on. So started off with an environmental and ecological assessment. So walking around, looking at the land with an eye towards restoration and habitat, and kind of loosely with the idea of developing the parcel towards a nature-based asset. And so that's a big umbrella to describe the various paths that we could take with working on this property. So the second part, so doing an assessment, understanding what's happened, understanding what's here, and then the restoration planning part of it is looking at what's on the ground, where do we want to take it, where do we want the ecology to go, how will we get there, how will we access, you need different tools and that sort of thing to get there, and then kind of how do we stack the management techniques so that they're effective. So one of the major things that I'm going to recommend here is a mulching mower followed by an herbicide spray to bring down the shrubs, which are largely invasive species, mow them to the ground, and then treat them with herbicide so that they stop coming back. So that's part of the plan, if you will. So how to get from where we are today and set the ecology and the property on a trajectory towards these target ecosystems. So, and then the third kind of component of this is the implementation. So every plan's great, right? Until you got to implement them. So kind of helping support the township with the implementation side, whether that's fundraising or grant writing, that sort of thing. And then one of the key features of this, habitat restoration, is adaptive management. So the idea that I'll talk a bit more about this later, but adaptive management being that we don't have the whole plan figured out all at once, and we do activities, do management, come back, see what happened, adjust, absorb new information, and then make adjustments as we go forward. So as this project, if you will, or as this plan is implemented, there's going to be decisions of did the herbicide take up, and do we need to do another treatment of these invasives, or you just don't quite know how the ecology will respond. So adaptive management is a principle of allowing yourself to adapt and allow the plan to adapt, and a little bit of flexibility in it, so that we keep the big picture in mind and kind of go where we want to go. So that's kind of the overall project of what I've been working on. So assessing it, coming up with a restoration plan, and then thinking about implementation. So I'm going to go into what I did with the environmental assessment, and then kind of talk through the different findings, if you will. So started with desktop research. So I've received a lot of files and a lot of information. So went through and reviewed, past monitoring well data, old meeting minutes from the 80s where they were talking about the township dump, the old dump that was there. Basically trying to absorb and understand what the heck happened here and how can that influence and inform any plan that we have going forward. So did that basically from October into the field work, so I came out here several times to do field survey, looking for, it was a lot of bushwhacking, but trying to get a sense of the ecology, trying to get a sense of the topography, climbing in and down into the bottom of these gravel pits, going on my hands and knees back up to the other side because it's too snarly and I don't want to go backwards, but I got to go forwards. And so it was, I went through a shirt or two, but it was cool. I mean, honestly, to be frank, this is one of the most interesting parcels I've ever worked on. It's got a history of mining. It's got a history of timber clearing. There's a dump. There's water quality issues and this sort of thing. So it was really, just really interesting. So went through surveying trees, invasive species, the topography. I was trying to find different, the different monitoring wells, et cetera, just getting myself pretty acquainted with the property and mapping it out. I took a GPS with me and mapped and tracked and that sort of thing. So took all that field work data back home and put it into a GIS and have built out basically the analysis and planning part of it. So I'm going to go in more detail through the analysis because I went through a lot of interesting things, and so I think it'd be helpful for everyone to understand what's happened here. So these are just a few shots from out and about on the field on this side. This is down one of I think that's the west property boundary. So you can see how it was a clear cut right up to the property line. I think in this instance that might actually be the exact property line. Left tall trees, and then just right down to the ground. This here is one of the monitoring wells. So there's several water quality monitoring wells throughout the property, and that's one of them.
Are there two?
I think there's 6.
Okay. One of them was ours.
Oh, nice. What number do you know?
I don't know the number, but we are the second house off of Brighton Road,
Okay.
and we're monitoring.
Okay. Yeah. So there's kind of two different. Maybe the monitoring of your well itself.
No,
Okay. I might. The salt plume down. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there are a few over there too. So, and then this picture is just trying to give you a sense of, there's a lot of shrubs on the ground, some trees that are starting to come back, and this kind of uneven aged ecology there. And then on the far right is showing, this is a black locust tree, so there's like there's thousands of these on the property where they cut, I think when did the timber harvest, they cut them. Which way did I go? They cut them, and black locust in particular it's a clonal species. It grows from its root system quite well, and so you're seeing 6, 7, 8 resprouts coming off the stump. But then also what it does, the stems will grow from the roots. If this here is the old stump, you can have roots over here popping up a new stem, and so. Black locust it will be a challenging species. It's a native plant, a native tree. It's not typically considered native to Michigan because it's a more southern tree, but it is a native to Americas. It's very fast growing. There's a lot of value. There's a lot of timber value to fuel value. It's a very dense wood. These sorts of things. People historically used to use them for fence posts because they're quite rot resistant. So there's tons of fence posts to be out there. If anyone's yeah, I keep pushing the button. Okay. This way. So I just wanted to share that real quick. So there's like I said, thousands of those. So while out in the field work, I was doing a variety of surveys, but I was seeing there was tons of deer, evidence of deer. I scared up a few different deer. I think they bed down in the heavy shrubs there. I was seeing scrapes on different shrubs. Saw some turkeys, squirrels, different birds. I'm not an ornithologist, so I wasn't IDing birds as I went, but they're definitely there. I did see pockets of some nice native grasses and flowers. So particularly up towards the north side of the property, there was some prairie grasses, native prairie grasses, big blue stem, little blue stem, which was cool to see. And then lots of native shrubs and trees all mixed in with a lot of invasive plants. On the right is a pretty typical view where you've got, this tree here. I believe it might be a cottonwood. I can't tell from the picture, but a tree or two left up high. These are mostly black locust, these branches here, and then you'll see in the foreground there's some common buckthorn, there's some oriental bittersweet, and so there's native plants mixed in. There's also just a lot of invasive plants, and so that's going to be part of what we'll need to address. And so then the landscape stuff, I'm gonna talk about this stuff coming up here very soon, the image analysis and that sort of stuff. So after all the field work, I kind of came away with okay, I need to characterize this property. I need to break it into smaller chunks. I need to understand kind of what's happening. Trying to think about all the entire property as one is overwhelming. So there was kind of three main habitat types, and so starting with the mixed shrubland, this is essentially what I was just describing. There's tons of shrubs. The black locusts are coming back. The black locusts are quite dominant. And this is mostly, if you follow, I'm using the little hand there, these areas were clear cut. So these are all pretty snarly, big management units of essentially mixed shrubland. So there's a fair bit of hardwood regeneration happening. There's a fair amount of cut stumps of native trees and invasives that are coming back. So there's a lot of stuff, nature's coming back, but there's also a huge load of invasive shrubs and vines, which will struggle to, the native plants will kind of struggle to fight through, if you will, the invasive load. So the second kind of main habitat type was this buffer deciduous forest. So many of you may be aware, but when they did the clear cutting, they left some buffers along the property line. And there's some really big, beautiful trees. This mostly a closed canopy forest, large, yay big around trees. And for the most part, up here in the northwest corner, in this northeast corner, and kind of on down this east side, there's essentially an intact forest still there, which is great. There's way less invasives. It actually gives you a really good sense of what the rest of the property looked like, I think, because it was, big trees. There's invasive plants in there, but they didn't cut all the overstory, so the invasives didn't go wild. So, and then the third main habitat type was kind of a mixed conifer forest. So fairly interestingly, this area there, and this area here were the main gravel dugouts. And a little bit later, I'll show some of the more geology-oriented stuff. But what's come back in there is largely, there's a lot of conifers, so red pines, white pines, Scotch pines, fair amount of invasives and shrubs in there as well, but and then a lot of exposed sand. So really kind of interesting. I kind of felt like I was out on like one of the dunes, where it's like kind of sandy and duney, and then there's low junipers and some pine trees. It had that feel in some of these areas. So yeah, I basically went through and characterized the kind of dominant habitat types that are there. This, I guess maybe I should have said this. Yeah, go ahead.
So did they dig it up and then just leave, or how did this happen?
Yeah, so I'm realizing, I was just about to say, so this whole parcel was highly disturbed. So there was huge amounts of mining that happened from 1900 to like 1904 to 1951, where train cars coming out of, they had literal train cars of sand and gravel coming out of here. And so I'm going to talk about that with the sand and gravel mining, because it's a pretty cool mining operation. But so found a chair out there, kind of in this middle. Yeah. Anyways, there's this rich history here. Rich history. So I'm going to talk through some of the historic land use, kind of give you just that kind of the view of what's happened here, starting back in 1800, and then jumping forward to the sand and gravel and these topics on the left there. So. So I just wanted to show this to kind of give you a sense of the area and what was here. So in approximately 1800 to like 1807, the original General Land Office land surveyors came out, and everything around here is township and range, gridded out. These surveyors went, put in stakes, described the ecology, described the landform, and they did it across the state of Michigan, which is super cool. You can read these old records of, pathway, that just these old survey records of different areas. And so I believe it was Michigan State took all of that information and built a approximately 1800 land cover map. And so the state of Michigan will show you the different habitat types. I've zoomed in here on the parcel, which shows the entirety of it's a mixed oak forest. If you look to the east, over here is a black oak barren. And I think the difference here, so oak barrens are typically less, they're not closed canopy forests, they're more open. So they'll have intermittent trees, they'll have a lot more ground layers. A mixed oak forest is more of a traditional forest where you think of with closed canopy. And so also back in the 1800s, and before that, the Native Americans used to do a lot of prescribed burning. And so prescribed burning was something they did to clear out the undergrowth, to help with hunting, that sort of thing. And so a lot of the ecology of southern Michigan is driven by fire. So the fire would come through, it would consume the shrubs, and it would allow these. So for example, the black oak barrens, the fire would sweep through there, keeping the trees down, the trees and shrubs down. And so the barren, it would be more grasses and forbs at the ground level, and then intermittent full-grown trees. So, and then, so I'm sharing this way of kind of giving a context. So this property used to have a big mixed oak forest on it around 1800. To the west of it was a wet prairie. That's where Chilson Creek is. And so, makes sense. A lot of water, a lot of wetlands, that sort of thing. So there'd be more wet prairies there. So fast forwarding to the 1900s, the parcel was extensively mined. So sand and gravel, my understanding is that they were, it says 35,000 tons per month. I'm giving all credit to Ryan Grote, who I don't think I've met. I don't know if you're here, but he's not here. I got a bunch of his files, and so I'm giving him credit for a lot of this. But this picture down here shows the locomotive style steam shovels where they were scooping it out and putting on train cars. So there was railroad spurs. And my understanding is they were going to, I think, taking a lot of it to New York. But basically 50 years of solid of solid gravel and sand mining. So on the right is the 1950 aerial image. So this is right before it was sold to the DNR for $1. So you can see here, so these are this right here, if you remember that conifer area I was talking about, and this area here, you can see this other swale here. These are like the three main, I have to believe they were either using trucks or, I don't know, like pulling, they dug it out and then they were using that as access to pull all the material kind of to the southwest down this way and on out. So you can see, yeah, these ridges are still there. These are the ridges climbing up and down. There's a ridge here. So just interesting. So this is what it looked like, yeah, right after it was done mining. So it was pretty fresh. So then if we go forward a couple, 10, 15 years, the area was used, the north area, so this area up here that's kind of white, was used as a township dump, and various things were dumped in there. And approximately 1970 was when it was closed, so this image is from 1966, so a few years before the dump was closed. And so you can, I'm looking at this, and what I notice is it's white. It kind of looks like bare soil, like maybe this is a cover. They put dirt over top of things, or kind of covered up the trash. It's also right adjacent to one of these mining pits. So I'm guessing they kind of drove up, dumped it down, filled it up, put some dirt over it, and carried on. So. In reading the different township meeting minutes in 1984, there was an effort to understand and try to find more information out about this dump, and the state didn't have any information, so it was kind of a lost file. And so then, also in the 80s, this was in the Genoa Township for policy plan for groundwater protection. They were, they put in wells, took water quality samples right near the abandoned dump, and back then they were negative for volatile organics and metals. But they were quite close, the wells were quite close to the dump itself. So
How many acres are we talking about total for the scope of this?
the whole parcel or the dump?
The whole parcel,
The parcel's, was it 75 acres?
75 acres. And
Yep.
that's Brighton Road at the top.
That's Brighton Road at the top, yep. Yep, Brighton Road's here, Chilson Road's here.
Railroad track coming down.
Yep, and this is the railroad track. Yeah, sorry, I should have done a bit better intro. So this is just, brought these two images just to show change through time. So on the left is the same 1966 aerial image, right after, right before the dump closed. And then in 1980, you can see there's been some growth. There's more trees have grown in here. This is mostly black locust. And you can still see the swales. These gravel swales are still quite obvious. So just, yeah, showing change through time. And then, I'm not really going into much detail on this, but I just wanted, to mention the wastewater treatment plant contamination. There has been, lead above the criteria, and in 2024 there was, the map on the right is the 2024 residential well sampling for sodium and chloride. So wastewater treatment plant plume is the blue, and that's that's the the contaminated groundwater with sodium and chloride. So I'll leave that there. So then coming a bit closer to the present day was 2020 and 2021. This is the DNR timber sale that I think many of you are likely familiar with. My understanding is they came in the dead of night and cut a bunch of trees down and didn't tell anybody and didn't do a very good job, didn't get much money for it. And 2 in the morning. Yeah, that's wild. I will say it was not the best forest harvest I've ever seen. just leave that there, yeah. On the right is the DNR's timber sale map, which is helpful. So it's kind of showing, you can see those mining swales are showing up on here. This big area is where they just clear cut everything, and that was the higher grade, mixed deciduous oak, primarily oak, that they came in and cut out. So, useful information.
They only got $57,000 for all that.
That was the advertised price. I don't know what they ended up getting. I just pulled that from the timber sale documents. I think they got less than that, is what I've heard. Yeah.
That sale also included the condemned property,
Jeez.
so it
Okay.
wasn't just this property.
Okay. There's a couple parcels.
Yeah, that would be kind of again like,
So yeah, maybe that. Yeah, that's wild. So what I did, kind of based on this, is I wanted to do a forest characterization or a stand height analysis. And so what this is looking at aerial images before and after the harvest, and using image classification to essentially take all the pixels of the image and attach a height value to them based on a variety of parameters. So each pixel ends up with a height value, and then that height value will show things once you run the analysis before and after. So why do this? What do we learn? It helps us kind of see what the historic forest form and heights might have been. It'll help us kind of give us insights into the forest age and the structure, as well as just understanding the scale of logging, which, ta-da, not much, or huge scale. So it's kind of cool, I think. I don't know, I'm a nerd though. On the left is the image I used from 2013. So you can see the intact forest, looks to be closed canopy. You can see these swales, again, the mined swales. And then on the right is the characterized image. So the dark green are trees that are 4 to 10 meters high, so tall trees. The light green are, excuse me, I misspoke. The dark green are trees 10 meters or taller, so quite tall. The light green are 4 to 10 meters tall, so middle height. And then there's a little bit of brown kind of down here, and those are just shrubs lower than 4 feet. So it's basically looking at the green spectral signature, so the green colors, and characterizing them. So this shows, hey, there's a huge, tall, nice forest on the majority of this parcel. So then we go to 2022. Same idea, same thing. On the left is the cut. You can see the cuts here. This is all a nice light green, looks kind of mowed down. And then on the right, all that dark green is gone. There's you can see, this is the before and after basically. So what this tells us is that, they clear cut the areas higher than 10 meters. Pretty thoroughly went through and clear cut it. They took the redwoods, the red oaks, the mature hardwoods, the white oaks, the hickories, those sorts of things. And then kind of some of the other species that are around are the black locust and the sweet cherry, aspen, conifers, cottonwood, sassafras, white pine, red pine, scotch pine. So a lot of those, the white pine, red pine, scotch pine, are remaining in these. They didn't take those trees, and they're not as mature as the other ones. So yeah, so did this stand height analysis before, after. So on the right is a present day aerial imagery, and you can start to see, the landforms. So that is what happened. So honestly, the majority of this plan is trying to recover from this clear cut. So when you clear cut a species, you clear cut a forest, you're getting all that light that used to be absorbed in the canopy by the trees is going down to the ground, And so on the left-hand side where there are still trees, all that sunlight's blocked on the forest floor. There's invasive plants on the left in those tall trees, but on the right where they've clear cut it all, now all that energy is getting down to the ground. All those invasive plants are very good at using it and growing and snarl, growing quickly, and so out competing a lot of the native plants that are there. So yeah, it's a pretty devastating picture. Yeah. Okay, one last aerial. Ta-da, that's it today. So now I'm gonna kind of switch into the planning side of things. So, all right, cool. There's all these rich history of different things that have happened on this property. What are we gonna do about it? And how best to shape the ecology going forward? So I'm gonna talk a little bit more in detail about each of these things, but basically kind of the three main considerations that I'm thinking about are the access, so ability to get to the property, get onto the property, and get around the property for vehicles, for people, for machines to do any of the proposed work. The second bit is the existing habitat types, so thinking about shrubland versus the closed canopy forests that are there, and excuse me, the invasive species that are on site. And then the third piece is where do we want to go? What are the target ecosystems? What do we want to make this? What are our management interventions geared towards? So, starting with the access, I think, so what I've done is up in the top right are two possible locations for a more formal vehicle access. So this would be parking for cars if it's hiking, or it'd be parking access for machines to come in off the street to do some of the management stuff. So there are two spots that were previously used during the logging area to get the logs out of there. So and then what I've also done is laid out a proposed footpath slash basically an access trail system. So I'm seeing that it's not, are you able to see these? Yeah, those dashed lines aren't showing up so well. But basically, each of the management units I've put an access trail around, and those access trails are taking into consideration the topography. So there's, they're following ridges. So for example, if you go down, that gravel swale is right on the ridge where you could reasonably expect to drive a forestry mulching mower to actually cut this path. Yeah. 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 That actually, this little bit here, it would, short answer is yes, I considered it. It would need a bit more grading to make it, you kind of come off the road and have to kind of go up and over a hill. Yeah. Yep. So, I don't know.
It's on the north side of Brighton Road, I don't know where it is. I get everybody in this room to vote with me if I could. It's just gonna negatively impact the property values and increase traffic on that road where we already.
I'm right there by that first triangle.
Okay.
2 homes there and then some more off the corner.
Yep.
Okay, we were the first, or we were the second house to get cleared. The Weaver property and the Coyer property.
Okay.
It's just,
It's a mess. It's a bomb. The trees are, I want you to come over to my house and see.
well,
And walk the perimeters of these people's property.
Right.
Glenway, everybody that borders this.
I did walk the perimeter of the property. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we have trees, my husband's 71, there's no way we can cut them down. I mean, because the root system has destroyed the other trees on our property.
I would
Okay.
anticipate a third lane being added to Brighton Road where these vehicles be turning in and out of.
Right. So I will say, you know, I think one of what this is me proposing, you know, it's a very small, it'd be 10 cars, 5 cars sort of thing where you're pulling in, going for a walk or a hike around the property. I do think part of the consideration for up there was they've already bulldozed and created a lane in, and so I could see getting equipment that we might need for the restoration
Are you
on
going to
there.
clean up our property lines where there are trees? And are you going to put borders so we don't get shot at anymore, or we don't have people going over our property anymore?
I have not made any consideration for fencing or anything like that. So we'll get a little bit further in. So on the east side, where there's actually on this parcel's side of the line, there's standing timber that's nice and high quality. Cleaning up, improving the ecology, being mindful of the boundaries.
Yeah. So, question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in it.
Mhm.
First of all, I think one of the biggest concerns for me is the hill on Brighton Road. And the
Yep,
access
yep.
up in there. I think I'm concerned, but you know why some of us on the east border still have tall trees, right?
Because you took a buyout or something. Yeah. You
You bribe the guy.
bribe the guy coming. Yeah.
Yeah. I paid the guy a couple grand to not take out a bunch of trees.
$500 a house.
No, I paid him $2 grand so he wouldn't take out the trees.
Oh, there's.
The guy in the.
In the
in the-
hard
in
harvest.
the machine, yeah, in the machine.
Yeah, we could.
Wow. That's wild.
And
That's
one of the neighbors, hold on.
that's
He made more money from us than he did.
I should
Yeah.
have you guys because we were the first two.
Right, so the only
They
reason why
just cut it down.
those of us that are like halfway down the street
I
were
was
able to do
literally
that
going tree
is
to
because
tree.
one of the
I was going to that one, don't think that one.
Yep.
ran out at 4 o'clock in the morning to ask him what he was doing.
what the heck you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he told her, I'll give you guys for 100 feet, $500 for 100 feet. And so she
Yeah,
ran
that's wrong.
up and
Yeah.
down.
That's not right.
Right.
That's not.
It's past
Yeah.
our property line.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can. It jumps out. You can see right where they jumped out off the line. Yep.
We tried to talk to him and he just, he didn't ask if we had grandkids or dogs out there.
Right.
He just came in and
Started cutting.
chopped.
Yeah. Yep. Here we're gonna, if we could, sorry guys. Yeah.
Make sure you were aware of why there are
Yep.
some tall trees.
Yep. Yep. He was gonna ask one more real quick. Yeah.
my last point on the access points being a fair, I'm sure cars will be there all hours of the night, where they will not be gated. And they could be lit with streetlights or lighting that would be intrusive to the people that live on Old
Yeah.
Ward. And I just don't think mixing this kind of random people stop to a neighborhood area is the thing.
Yeah. I think.
We'd be calling the sheriff every night, I will. If I see a car there and it's dark, I'm calling the sheriff.
Right.
You know, so I think I would like to advocate a strong consideration for a barrier to be placed up there versus an access point. And the access points be down here in an unpopulated area.
Okay.
Where straight,
Yep.
flat ground would allow, unobtrusive access to the land and minimize the number of accidents that occur.
Yeah.
I would say we get, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, probably one accident a month, at the top of this hill on Brighton Road. And your access point is probably 200 feet from the top of the hill. So when somebody's going 55 and they top
Right.
that hill and they see brake lights,
And we, you know, Kevin, we did bring that up that has come up is the, all this, any of that access point would need to be cleared with the, the road commission in terms of sight lines and that sort of thing, so.
Real quick, just ultimately, the Livingston County Road Commission will determine where the access point is. There is some trouble, as much as it seems like it'd be really cool to be down off of Chilson Road. We're trying to do as minimal land disturbance as possible. There would be major fill that would need to be brought in. So that's why that area is not necessarily viewed as optimal, but the road commission could say that's the only place you can do it. So it will be their call.
Yep. So, oh, yeah.
This is pretty close, I don't know if it's contiguous to Brighton State Park. Would it be possible to tie into their sort of infrastructure that they have already built? So, like a trailhead, what would be in the southeast corner down there, by way someplace, I know there's a parking lot over there for Brighton State Park, and sort of use their parking with the trail into this parcel.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's existing infrastructure.
I don't, yeah.
Just to piggyback, it does, that bottom left corner does touch Brighton Rec area, but the hard part is that railroad crossing cuts off the park from anything else. That's
So
just,
it's right there, okay.
yeah, like, I mean, if we're looking here, this is that property, this is Brighton State Rec area, and then that's the railroad, and so that's it.
So our parcel is kind of isolated. Everything behind us is privately owned. And of course, everything to the east, there's a subdivision there. And on the west end, there's a few individual homes. There was a separate parcel sold to a private individual that comes off of Cunningham Lake Road. But also in the drawing where you see, there was an earlier drawing where there's a little triangle on the west side of Chilson Road. The DNR did actually retain that parcel. So we don't own anything to the west of Chilson Road.
I'm not driving.
That logging operation is contracted out, right?
That's my understanding,
I
yeah.
just want folks to know that the corruption you're talking about was not the state. That was your logging company. And I would predict that if the state went through with whatever they were gonna go through with, they'd be pretty pissed off at that logging operation. But I think it's important to separate those two things. This isn't the state that was collecting money in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
They
it was mismanaged, yeah.
collect bids, and the bids come in, and then they, everything that happens after the operation is done is managed by the state, but with the upheaval of this whole project, I'm guessing they didn't follow through with that. But I think it's important to understand that that's not the state.
Oh,
It wasn't the state that was out there
it
playing.
is the state, I mean, they didn't follow up, they just let these guys come in. I mean, look, let me summarize what this guy just said, right? He sold it to the DNR for $1, right? Then they dumped shit in the corner for 20 years, right? Then they just let him come in and log it out
Clear cut it and then sold it.
for 20, 30
Yeah.
grand. And then they sold it to the township for 300 grand.
Yep.
So they've done nothing but rape this land for 20 years, 50 years.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yep.
I'm not saying there's,
So
all right, so,
responsible, the state's absolutely responsible.
no, I'm saying the state's not responsible for the, the state wasn't out there collecting money in the middle of the night.
right. So we're gonna water under the bridge here. I mean, I'm here to help us look forward. It sounds like a pretty messed up situation, and I point heard around the access, and it's clear that there was quite a lot of trouble with things. So
One more thing, right? So now he's gonna tell us if this is our neighbor, right? The state's our neighbor. Now he's gonna come
safe? Is this
Yeah, I mean,
herbicide
it's
safe?
already polluted.
Yeah.
You know, I can't drink the water out of my house.
So yeah, so this is a parcel that's been it's been mined before the state had it. It's been pretty well. This is extractive economies in motion. So they've extracted the value of the gravel out of there. They've extracted the value of the timber out of there, and nobody, you know, typically when you do a timber harvest, you plan on some of that, the revenues, to go back into to controlling invasives, doing some of the management, the timber stand improvements. None of that was done. I mean, this parcel seems like it's been since about 1901 has been the value's been extracted out of it. And so township is now in the play, the township owns it, and they're got an opportunity to put it on a different trajectory. And what I'm trying to do is give an outline of things that would work and improve the value of the parcel in the long term. But yeah, it's a cost. There are other actors, other players here that did a lot of this damage. So I'm going to keep moving in the interest of time here. So last point here on the left that's just an example of that was where might not be able to tell it, but this is a trail where they trucked out a whole bunch of the trees. So there's big ruts, and that's all black locust kind of growing back around it. So one of the management suggestions is to get a forestry mulching mower and basically reestablish trails throughout the property, following some of the existing logging roads and that sort of thing. Yep. Where you have the mulching mower go through, yeah, you'd mulch that down. So let me just real quick. So these are the three main habitat types. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm actually proposing for the ecology. So these mixed shrubland, buffer deciduous forest, and then the mixed conifer woodlands. If we go, so let me go back here. So the mixed shrubland, this is the majority of the parcel is this mixed shrubland area. Where do we want it to go? There are some trees regenerating. There are some native plants in there. There's a lot of invasive plants. And so, and the soil itself is highly disturbed, a lot of sand and gravel. This leads me to believe that an achievable target is something along the lines of a deciduous savanna. So prairie grasses, planting prairie grasses, which do well in, sandy, dry soils, allowing the trees that are regenerating, protect them, help them regenerate. So kind of long, think 20 years down the line, you'd have prairie grasses and forbs with large trees growing up, kind of an oak opening sort of look to it. So the way you'd get there is essentially using a forestry mulching mower to mow, chip, get all the as much, targeting the invasives, mulch that to the ground, let the plants regrow, and then using a foliar herbicide spray, which is it's basically like what they spray on corn and soybeans, but using a Garlon, it's a selective herbicide that targets broadleaf plants, and it doesn't impact the grasses. So you're able to kind of go through, target killing the plants that we're wanting. So there's a whole. This is a whole process. This is the adaptive management where we'd go through and mulch mow. Hopefully when the ground's frozen, then you wait 6 months, let everything green up, and then you come back and do a boom spray, foliar spray of the invasives, and then you see how it took, see how much invasives are coming back. Might need to do a second spraying, and then further down the line, we could add plants into it. So plant grasses, plant forbs, and kind of do it that way. And so then there'd be another, to make sure that the grasses and such grow, you'd need to follow up and do mowing every year. And so it's an involved, all that to say it's an involved process, but to actually get these, this is, we're talking probably 40 or 50 acres of this parcel are just this snarly shrubland. What do you do about it? I mean, it's gonna have to be a pretty heavy-handed approach. And I've done a few of these where, yeah, I've done this process in wetlands. I've done this process in uplands as well, and it's effective. It takes time. You got to stay after it. You got to. So a couple years, yeah. I mean, I think 3, 4, 5 years, you could have the invasives controlled and the forbs and grasses established. Yeah.
So the mulcher that you're describing, are there any other methods to be able to remove like the things that maybe would be like more cost effective? Like is there any, like could you burn it? Like you alluded to in the beginning with the
Yeah.
Americans doing that. Controlled burn, would that work?
That's in the technique toolbox. I'd like these pictures we're looking at here. I don't know if there'd be enough fuel. So some of the areas with the big trees still there and all that oak litter. So oak leaves in particular are quite dry and they carry fire quite well. You could get a prescribed burn to go through the understory. How far it would go through here, I don't know. Yeah, have to see. Yeah.
So in your experience, what's the sustainability of that or opening like condition long term without fire?
It would need fire or mowing. So
So you have to reduce.
yeah. So this is one of the questions to discuss sort of at the end is kind of the long-term stewardship. So any habitat management that you're doing, you've got to think long-term. There's interventions that you have to do along the way. It's not, we're not growing turf grass. It's more involved where you're, prescribed fire is a huge tool that's used quite a lot. And once a lot of these shrublands get transitioned to where there is enough fuel, yeah, you'd burn them every 5 years, that sort of thing to help keep open conditions and have the grasses and forbs regenerate. Goats, yes, yeah. If you know a good goat guy, yeah. Goats would also be you'd need to, yeah. That's a good question. It'd be several miles. I didn't actually do the calculation. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so if I go back, there's these sort of things are around that you can walk through fairly easy, but those, like this trail here it's a picture taken from right about here, and it goes about to here, and then it's just snarled away and you lose it. Like I said, I carried a machete, and so I was macheteing and crawling around. It was, it's inaccessible. Yep. So this is kind of what I'm proposing for the large areas of mixed shrubland. So the target ecosystem is a deciduous savanna. It's a prairie interspersed with open grown trees. Kind of leveraging the fact that there is some regeneration happening. And there's some good. Like this bottom left picture here is a white oak. There's several good trees in that mix as well. So the buffer deciduous forest, so these are the areas that were the buffer zones. Very nice woodlands, beautiful. They took quite a pretty forest.
It was an oasis,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
It was an oasis.
I mean, the picture on the right, I took some DBHs, diameters, and there's 4-foot trees, still there, and that's pretty impressive. Honestly, most of this, what I'm recommending is just controlling the shrubs and the vines by hand in the understory. So, you can see, it's not as visible, but there's that's an invasive, there's invasive plants in the understory, and if you control the invasive plants, put some fire on the ground, you'll get the native ecosystem will come back. I'm pretty much can guarantee that there's grasses and forbs in the seed bank that would come back and respond well to fire. So. Yeah, so, and then these areas are, so these are the mixed conifer woodlands. So these are the cutout. This is mainly this area and this area and this edge here. These are the deepest areas on the property. So this is where they've taken out most of the material. And there's significant conifer overstory. So there's the fair number of white pines and red pines and Scotch pines, also a lot of invasives. So the restoration priorities here is, again, kind of controlling and thinning the invasive species, leave the trees, let them continue to be the overstory, and prioritizing protecting any of the deciduous trees that are growing in there. So there's other deciduous trees mixed in. In this lower right area, this is a pretty cool, pretty interesting. I mean, this is where I felt like I was in the dunes. It's just sandy and exposed sand. There's a lot of creeping juniper, which is a native plant. That's what these low conifer shrubs are. And then there's I think these maybe red pines up high. But really interesting, and you could put some interesting plants in there that are more dune oriented if we want to get creative. Yeah. With this or with the whole property? It would look like a lot of other places in the world. Trees would eventually get through. It would be an impenetrable mass of invasive species and brush. It wouldn't, yeah. I think trees would eventually, the oaks, they're just slower growing. So I think some of them get through. You'd end up with pretty much a black locust forest for about half of it that are just dense and prickly and several stems.
Where does the township see the problem in that?
I don't know. I'm not the township. I'm a restoration ecologist, so I see a lot of problems. Plant diversity, there's a lot of value to improving native ecosystems.
That's part of what we're here for, is to get feedback as to what exactly people want to see. Currently, it's completely unusable. Like, you can't walk at all. There's literally zero value for the residents to just observe nature. And there's actually, it's kind of difficult for some of the larger animals to survive in there too. It's a pretty rough terrain. The hope is to leave it very, very natural, but have it something that people can go out and maybe walk around a little, watch some birds, things like that, as long as that's what people are looking to do. But the early feedback that we got was to make it a little more usable, but leave it very, very natural.
So I think one of the pieces, so if I jump forward, so I'm talking about a lot of restoration machines and herbicides, yada, yada. I'm not proposing that we do it all at once. So what I think might help help everybody, honestly, going forward, is choosing a smaller area and doing it to see some of the results. So like if we take, one of these areas up closer to the north side, do some of the, mulch mow it, follow up with herbicide, put some seeds down, come back and either burn or mulch mow or goat, and see what comes back. Likely, once there's a prairie savanna there, we will definitely start seeing different birds and different wildlife will start to show up. And grasses and flowers are pretty in their own way. And so, I think one of the key points that I always tell people is you're not going to get instant results, and don't bite off a huge chunk, but don't bite off more than you can chew. So, 75 acres is a really big property, and doing one of these 5 acre management units can really help demonstrate success, and can roll that forward. I don't see any reason to fill them, because one of the strengths of something like black locust is they do stabilize the soil. So the soil is pretty stabilized from the vegetation that's there. Once you start moving soil and you're breaking up roots, and then also like this area down here where I was showing those pictures of all that exposed sand, there's no organic matter, there's no, so as soon as you start moving things around, you're mixing up any organic matter that's formed over the last last 50 years. Up here, there's more to the soil. There's trees have been dropping leaves and those have started to break down, so there's a bit more organic matter. And so I think there probably would be some grading related to putting in access trails. I did my best considering topography to put proposed trails where you could actually get a machine, but there's some pretty steep drop-offs and topo maps don't capture it all. Initially, I'm proposing that we would mulch it, treat the invasives, and see what comes back. And I think following up with, I would expect there to be some grasses that would grow. So I would think initially that we would keep it natural, maybe have to mow it with a more traditional mower seasonally. I don't see any real reason to put in a full gravel-based. I'm not, no. How do you mean developed? Like, I think you can put houses, but you can't put drinking water in, or groundwater. Yeah. So, so the restoration, kind of the plan here is, I mentioned adaptive management before. So it's a structured process to learn from your actions and adjust accordingly. So this is where I was saying, if we were to choose maybe a pilot area to do some of the more intensive restoration things, learn from it, see how the land responds, see how the plants respond, and adjust accordingly, and then garner success, get additional community buy-in, people start seeing what we're doing and liking it, maybe we get some funding to do more of the area. Back to your point about if we did nothing, I think there's a lot of places on this property alone where we're not going to be able to do it. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, we're not going to get to all these areas and all this management. It's a pretty huge undertaking. So I'd encourage the thinking of, all right, well, where do the residents want to develop a more nature-based experience, and put some energy and effort towards that so that people can experience it, go out there and see the improved ecology, see the the plants and that sort of thing, and then kind of help that.
Did anybody actually say they wanted to do that? Build a trail in a nature area or anything like that? Is anybody writing letters or?
I got invited to apply for the, it seems like there's sentiment there. I'm responding to interest in developing.
I'm not being sarcastic.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I think there's, yep.
Is there grant money involved in this with, what you're gonna do or what you're thinking of doing? Or?
So one of the follow-ups would be, applying for grants. So there is state funding, working in collaboration with them. Yeah. So I've part of what I do is help with grant funding and grant to make these things actually go.
Yeah, real quick. So our hope is to apply for a grant. Livingston County is in a pretty solid position in Lansing right now. So we'd like to maybe take advantage of that, and hopefully we can get a grant to help offset a lot of the cost. And you can get grants that's spread over a number of years, because this project, it's not like it's just going to happen overnight. It's not like building a subdivision or anything like that. I mean, this is going to be a a 5 to 10 year process to really restore more of a natural habitat, let's call it. And then there's also, we might look into a little bit of some issues with oversight. I'm not sure how far that's going to go, but we have a pretty good lead there. And then after that, we're going to explore some private, you know, if people want to donate. You know, we're looking to work with some scouting troops and maybe do some volunteer days for some of the hand labor. You know, so there'll be a little sweat equity from the residents, and then hopefully, like I said, the state will sprinkle a little bit of money on this and help us just restore it to a nice, usable, natural park.
Yeah, so this is the slide where I just wanted to open it up a little bit more, questions and discussion. You know, I think some of these amenities, the parking lots, the trails, these sorts of things, we've talked a bit about that. But, you know, from my view, putting together a plan, if you will, to restore and bring back nature, there's certain elements you need. You need the access trails to be able to get around. You need to be able to get in, you know, be able to access the property. And then I think, you know, talking with Kevin and with others throughout this process, you know, from my view, this could become something, you know, citizens could want to, you know, add amenities to it. It would make an awesome bike park. It would make an awesome disc golf park. It's a very interesting and cool topography. So I'm just saying those things out loud. There's a lot of, not a lot, but there are grants that are towards developing park amenities. And so it's a matter of deciding, and I'm not the one deciding this, of how much development do we want? Do we want to just do basic access trails and management, or do we want to try for something a bit more, knowing that all these things do have costs, but it's an investment into the township property, into you know, the future of this land, and yeah, so yeah, I think this.
We're ready to open it up
Yeah,
to
kind of open it up and
to discussion.
talk about things.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I'll come over and
Thanks. So your restoration targets are pretty much what's there, right? With the exception of removing the invasives and stuff. I'm assuming that's a cost thing, but was there ever any consideration of trying to restore those cut areas back to mixed oak?
So, yes, I think that the discussion was there. There's already trees growing, so part of this was, it's mostly, from my view, it's mostly cost. You know, we could buy oak trees and go plant them, but protecting them and watering them and make sure they take is effort. How I was proposing to do it is the way I could see cost effectively covering that much ground and getting the whole system moving towards, you know, a more native plant community.
a lot of the tree replacement will kind of depend on what kind of grant or what kind of money we can fundraise. You're not going to be able to put little twigs in, the deer will just trample them down to nothing. You're going to have to actually start out with a little bit of a tree, so you're probably going to have less in number, more in size of what you plant if you want it to survive. Let me get over to you.
The homeowner's taxes, property taxes be affected for this 75 acres? Would it be spread out over the whole county, which would have access to this property, or just access by Genoa Township people? I don't understand.
Well, it'll be a natural area, and it is, Genoa Township does own it, so we will be on the hook for the repairs, although, as I've mentioned, we do hope to get some state funding. But yeah, we anybody in Livingston or anybody anywhere will be able to come use the property.
The whole county theoretically could be taxed to help fund the 75 acres.
Well, we don't have the ability to tax the county.
But you have the ability to see who can use it.
We do. We do. Yep.
So you've got Bishop Lake right down the road. We don't need that.
Okay.
It's been raped and abused, and it's a wreck to look at from the road. So, I mean, God almighty, I mean, why keep throwing money at something like that?
Well, that's part of what we're here to see. We think it could be restored into a pretty nice piece of ground, but if the people don't want to see that. What's that?
It was a nice piece of property.
It was a beautiful piece of property.
But all those individuals that paid, extra money that we went out and paid that, do we own that property now?
It
Why
is,
can't we? Because we paid for it to keep those trees there. I mean, he paid a significant amount more than I did, but we paid money to keep that area nice,
yep.
right? And so we kind of saved you guys.
Oh, no, absolutely.
So do we own that property?
One of the things, well, it is owned by Genoa Township, but we have one of the things we've looked into.
We paid to have that property saved.
Yeah, I agree, and we thank you. I wish they could have gotten a hold of more people, and more people could have
See a trail sitting there.
saved more.
Right up into the area that is an area that backs up to my house, basically, and all the other homes along there.
Mine too.
Right.
I don't live on a floodway, but I do live off of Brighton Road.
Okay.
How much would it cost to put in a hiking trail? I mean, like, to do what you're talking about, what are we talking? Just ballpark.
Couple thousand. I mean, you're renting a mulching mower, or hiring a contractor to put in a couple miles of, couple thousand.
Like clear cut it and all the stuff you're
I
talking
mean, basically, you can hire somebody to come in with it's a 8-10 foot wide mulching mower, and they just mulch it all down.
like a Troy built, just.
Yeah, like a forestry drum mulcher. So, I mean, there are, what this presentation doesn't have is cost projections for different variants, which is an important piece. But something like establishing access and trails is pretty low cost. There would be kind of ongoing mowing or whatever, but that's like, that would improve the value of the property and increase access, et cetera, and,
If we do that, can guys still hunt back there?
Yeah, we're kind of in a don't ask, don't tell on the hunting. I mean, obviously, that's what it's been used for. We support hunters. We've never had an issue before, but, the lawyer might tell us a different story, but yeah. Hey, there we go.
Okay, the former dump, that was, if I'm guessing right, that is exactly where the logging trucks were leaving constantly for months. What impact did all of that have on the soil with the dump area and moving forward? I've got nothing on that since I bought my house there in 2016,
right.
and all of a sudden I'm like, that's a former dump across Brighton Road. Had no idea, so, okay. Anything on that would be helpful.
I mean, part of my thinking around when I was proposing the parking area and the access off the north side is if you were to pave a lot, you would be paving over, you're basically doing more to seal the dump up. I mean, I don't think there's any plans to remove the dump.
Yeah, in general, if we don't disturb anything, as of right now, we're okay. We don't have to clean it up as of today's rules and regulations, and we'll kind of roll with that.
Kevin, wouldn't you have to, you talked about having to disturb it, to put that area in, so it's not like we're just gonna put concrete over it, it's gotta be graded, it's gotta be repaired.
It's not real rough right now. It's actually, there's a couple of fairly flat areas. I doubt we would be doing any concrete, any kind of paving. This would be like gravel.
Literally,
This
all
is
you-
a very
all you need-
unimproved.
All you'd need to do is when they left, they created the berms. If you removed those berms, you could come off of Brighton Road and loop back out, and you could put a gravel parking lot or bollard in an area to keep people parking areas, and it would be pretty minimally disturbant to the soil.
Did you plan to do that on the other side of the 100-foot tree?
Yeah. You'd come.
Get up in the morning, I don't look out at the parking
Yeah.
lot.
you'd come through, in my view, you would come through the trees on the existing cut. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we would be able to see anything from Brighton Road. And when we say parking, we're talking for like 5 to 10 cars max. We're not looking for a high traffic, we don't want to do Kensington Metro Park here. This is just a natural area to kind of enjoy wildlife and try to make some use out of this property.
So as you were walking around, you probably noticed that there's a lot of deadfall back there that the logger didn't even pick up. Is there a plan for any of that, or is it just gonna go back to the earth?
Back to the earth unless somebody's, I think most of it's beyond fire, there may be some firewood in there, but.
Part of our hope is if we can get an access trail and some people can make something good out of that, we would love for that to happen. Now that it's been pushing 5 years, even the stuff that's not on the ground, we probably lost that. And it's very sad that happened. Yeah, we went to walk it just to see what we had, and we were amazed at just how totally overgrown that the property was. So,
Can I ask that we use the microphone for the questions? We've got folks that are watching at home that can't hear the questions that want to, so.
I wanted to make a couple statements more than questions. Number one, don't look at this as a 5-year plan. This is a 30-year plan. We are not going to get this done. I've been pulling invasive species on my property for, almost 10 years, and I am making a little dent. The Asiatic bittersweet is huge. It twirls, it twists. Any tree there, if you do not attempt to control what's there, will be dead. If you look back at the south side of Pine Creek, those neighborhoods are being murdered by this vine. We need to control some of it if you want to even preserve what is possible. Secondly or thirdly, the Russian or autumn olive, those bushes are kind of like maybe 6 foot tall. They get a little bigger, but that's a problem for birds because what they do is they make their nests in these low-lying shrubs, and then they are easily attacked. So it hurts bird populations to have all these dominant shrubs without having pine cover or other trees. Black locust, doesn't it also change the acidity of the soil? So what actually happens to grow there might not be as native and friendly as we might like. I think it turns it acidic.
It's allelopathic, so it creates soil conditions that it likes that other species don't like. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a nitrogen.
Oh,
fixture.
yeah, it is. So, just don't look at this as we have to solve this problem tomorrow. This is just a long-term discussion that we will be having as long as we live here. So, I think preserving this as a green space is important and not allowing it to just go to absolute waste. I've been reclaiming a swampland literally for 10 years, and it is still work every summer. So good luck. Thanks, Genoa.
That's a really good point. I
Absolutely. Hang on.
wanted to just include at the bottom there is the long-term stewardship. So these are long-term care through time.
Just 2 comments. One is, I think, to your point, getting rid of as much of the invasive species we can is a valuable deal because it affects all of us in all the areas around us too. Matter of fact, just across the street from the fire department here, there used to be an open field and it's full of autumn now. You can't even see through it anymore in maybe 5 years. Second thing is maybe for you, at Island Lake, they're doing what you're describing right now. If you go a little bit east of JCPenney, walk that trail down there by the railroad tracks, they clear cut all that and then they burned it and they're trying to create the savanna again. And I'd say probably coming on this spring should be about 3 years. So I think we'll be able to see if they were actually successful at doing that here this year, or at least partially successful.
A good model or a good, something good to check out to see. Yeah.
Thank you. Mind if I address from the? Absolutely.
I just feel bad. You guys keep turning your head, so I'm going to come up here. My name's Brian Ignatowski. I'm actually a Hamburg Township resident, but I'm a candidate for the Michigan State House of Representatives for this brand new 48th district. So all this stuff happened historically. I've learned about history, but my personal history is that land that's behind me on the screen, I've taken my kids hunting there. Part of the reason why I'm running to be a state representative, to be your voice in Lansing, is because we have a vested interest in this area. And these types of things that happen are the things that have motivated me to be here. So I just want to introduce myself and just tell you that I have my cards on the back table. And I got to tell you, to the credit of my friends at Genoa Township, there's a very new board, and they're doing this the right way by opening it up to everybody. And I just love the interaction that's happening here. As I'm sitting here listening, I'm just realizing that a lot of townships and states and counties do not have these conversations. So get engaged and stay engaged like you are. I assume that you're all registered voters. This district, again, is new, so please take my literature. I'd be happy to talk to you guys individually, but I'm happy to be here. Honored to listen to all you guys and the different thoughts. And there's emotions, and I can feel that. And like I said, taking my kids hunting there and seeing the things that have happened, it's terrible. But again, these guys are doing the right things to have dialogue about what are we going to do going forward? Where's the money going to come from? And I want you to know that if I do have your vote and enough people that support my candidacy, and I am your voice in Lansing, the phone's open on day one. So if you want a grant to do something, if you want something collectively, I've been in Livingston County the majority of my life. My mom worked for the Register of Deeds for 25 years before she's retired. So I can tell you that engagement and coming out and doing what you're doing now is the thing that makes the difference. So that's all I wanted to say, and thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions or concerns? My friendly neighbor here.
If we get some sort of reimbursement or grant alignment, I think everybody here that put money out to save part of the forest should be reimbursed for their personal expense. I mean, as a gesture of good faith towards the neighbors of this piece of land, because that's what we are, and we're here because we're concerned about the misuse of this land by the township. So, for them to get their money back, I think is only fair. So something for you to consider if that's at all possible.
We would have to check on the legalities of that, but I certainly don't have a problem with that. But the state may have very stringent regulations on their grants. I don't honestly know.
Oh, I'm going to hold you to that. All right. We did not pay anybody. We were the first two homes to get cleared right off of Brighton Road, next to that Rod Pearson Development Company. They came right up to the property line and took some of our trees. What's going to happen to our boundary? I want somebody to come out and take a look and see what happened. Is there anybody available here in the township that can do that?
We can come take a look.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because it happened at the state level, there's not a ton that we can do. However,
Well, the erosion is there too. I'm talking about it's hurting my other trees, and they've all fallen down.
our best bet there is we're going to work with one of our local representatives who's in charge of, or he's on the oversight committee. And we're going to maybe see if we can get
A nice like pine border after they clear up the big, big trees that have fallen down would be nice. I mean, staggering pines or something that,
Yeah,
I don't want
I was going to jump
people
in and just
hunting
say,
on
like,
my land or walking through it again.
I
I'm
do
done.
I think one of the modifications, if you will, to the restoration plan could be considerations like you just said of like, they left a buffer, but there are areas where there are no buffer, and that could be where we include planting of significant trees of size to get that screen back for you, that sort of thing. So I think I'm hearing what you're saying there, and I noticed. I think I know which house is yours because I remember I was like, isn't the property line? There's cutting on the other side. Anyways, so yeah, this is good to hear because you can, yeah.
Absolutely. Get a hold of me. Just shoot me an email, supervisor@genoa.org. Whenever we do go to speak about oversight, you'll be the type of person we want to hear from because you've suffered damage at the hand of the DNR.
So I guess my question is, has there been any consideration to go back to either DNR or the logger and getting reimbursement for I mean, he just trashed this place, and state let it happen.
They did. And we're hopeful. Again, like I said, we have a friend in oversight, but, the DNR is not necessarily always super cooperative, but with the proper arm twisting, maybe. Again, Livingston County is in some pretty good situations in Lansing right now. So, we certainly can't make any promises, but our intention is to try to get the state to acknowledge that, mistakes were made and at least help us, restore this. It's never going to be what it was. We can't bring it back to what it was, but hopefully we can get it set on the right path. Maybe our great-grandchildren will be able to enjoy what it was. We will not, but if we do nothing, it's going to just be a wasteland. So I think we have to do something. And we're trying to get a gauge here for if people want some walking trails or if they just want it totally natural. We're fine either way. We want to do what the people want. Have another question back here.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for your work that you've done, and this has been very illuminating. I think you see that there's kind of like some people trauma because of what has happened. It's a scar in the land. I think it's kind of a scar in a lot of the people who lived near there, lived by there, used it. The fact that we're talking about creating a green space, just even those two words, a green space, someplace that certainly doesn't look like the devastation that it was left behind. As a community, if we can work together to make it a natural place, to make it a green space, to protect the people whose houses are right on those borders that have been affected by, again, this devastation. That should be a big consideration because they've already lost. They didn't just lose their property, they lost all this beautiful woodland, which was the reason, I'm sure, that they bought their houses and lived and played in those woods. So keeping it as a green space, figuring out how to go ahead, and I think this is exactly, as a community, what we should be doing, and coming together to talk about how to do this. So I like the ideas that we're spreading today.
Thank you very much.
The other thing I'd like to add to what you're saying, because I liked what you said, it protects the land from some misuse in the future if we do something and make it a green space rather than just leaving it as it is. Genoa Township might have different leaders who feel differently and sell the property to somebody. So I think it's a protective thing as well.
Because we certainly don't want commercial buildings back in there. We don't want any more gravel pit mining or dumps, which could happen. We need a protection.
Thank you. So I was just curious, with your experience, is a project like this with 75 acres, is this something volunteers could go in to try to eliminate the invasive species? And if not, what kind of costs do you have any kind of dollar figure on what it would take to remove the invasive species yet do minimal, improvement, I guess, other than just clear the invasive species and try to get natural species to come back in the area?
I think volunteers definitely have a place. There's a lot of the invasives work can and should be done by hand. In some of the areas with the big trees, it's perfect for volunteer work. To your question around the costs, kind of the mulch mowing and the spraying and the follow up. Mulch mowing is a couple $1,000s an acre. Spraying's maybe $1,000 an acre. Planting seed, that's really variable based on what sort of plant species you use. But it's not like, so the picture I showed, we turned 40 acre farm field into a planted prairie. It had been corn and soybeans, so the ground was already prepped. So we basically just had to, plant, and it was, it was around, I was too young to know the cost, but to actually, so I did a 10-acre prairie restoration, and I feel like it was about $1,000 an acre in seed costs, sort of thing. So it's thinking about the different areas as 5 to 10 acres, depending on their size. I plan to tighten up the numbers for what I'm proposing for the restoration, which is to give a ballpark of, a 10-acre thing, $10,000, $20,000, something like that.
Yeah, I love the idea of the green space, and I guess if it could be done with minimal impact so that it is just, that green space, because I can understand the people that live around it concerned about having, a lot of traffic through there. Plus, when we do have Brighton Rec, that's right there with trails and everything else designed for that. So, but I think it's great if it can be improved, certainly.
Absolutely, yeah. No problem. That's what we're here for.
Since you're here to get our feedback, which I'm sure we all appreciate, I think the people on Glenway should get special consideration for taking some sort of survey on how the space is divided between their property and this property. Because, if we got a bunch of people walking around on trails, hey, can I use your bathroom? Can I walk through to get a cup of water? Is there going to be a barrier? I'd like some consideration for options to give to the Glenway people, what that barrier would look like. Would it be a fence? Would it be a split rail? Would it be a pine tree stand, zigzagging down that line? I think, yeah, on the short street too, absolutely, yeah. And Chilson. Sure, I mean, work that into the plan, so as you develop along the line, wherever the trail borders Glenway, there's some sort of separation, so people know, okay, this is the end of the park, that's somebody's backyard, so they don't go borrow stuff that they're not supposed to, if that makes sense.
Definitely. When I was out doing field work, I felt very obtrusive. I did wear an orange vest, and it was in late October and early November, so I was like,
Did you have a drone?
No,
Okay.
no.
Did you have to climb over the logs to where you're talking about the house,
Yeah, yep. There's big trees, yeah.
Look like dinosaurs, that's
Yep.
what I want to do.
Got it.
I know there have been a lot of questions, and, a lot of what ends up getting done will depend on what kind of grant or what kind of fundraising we can do that. We're not looking to spend $500,000 of the taxpayers' money here. Genoa Township out of pocket would like to keep the number fairly low. We bought the property, which was a pretty big buy. It was a value, and it preserved a big space. And this board, anyway, the goal would be to lock it down to where it is forever, non-developed park. It will be parkland, so.
We just wanna know our boundaries, we want them staked out, and maybe some pine trees or split rail fences.
No, absolutely.
We took a big hit on this, and it wasn't just a couple days, it was months.
Oh, yeah. It was surprising. From out on Brighton Road, you didn't really know because they worked from the inside out.
Right. They were sneaky.
So they were. Again, the oversight thing will come into play. There's no guarantee that we'll be able to get something, but we're certainly hoping maybe somebody will see that this was misuse. But yeah, that is why we're doing this, is to get your feedback as to what you want to see happen. And I think we've gotten some pretty good ideas here.
I'm definitely hearing I gave considerations for the ecology around the border, but I wasn't thinking so closely about the people and the fence line and, clear marking of this is private property, et cetera, that.
Yeah, so we can absolutely polish up those trails. This is step one of a multi-step process. And then a lot of it will depend on the state and what we can secure.
Me? No. It seems like it's quite sandy. I don't know how much further you'd have to go to hit the, I mean, it's probably in the well logs. It's deep, it seems deep, yeah.
We do need to do minimal below-ground disturbance, just in case there's something there that we don't want to know about. So we're gonna, most of what we do will be above ground. No grade, minimal grading
Yep.
is the goal. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it, yeah.
I think Spencer's done a very good job.
I'm used to it.
Spencer, will we be able to make some of the presentation available digitally?
Yeah, you can have a copy of the
Okay.
PDF and.
As long as you're okay with that. I mean, this is your hard work, I know that, but I think a lot of people would like to see it.
Sure, yeah.
So we'll try to get it up on the website, so all of these maps and everything you've seen tonight, you can go ahead and comment on, look at, and then any suggestions, supervisor@genoa.org, just give me your feedback. We want as much as we can get. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, I appreciate that. We need people that are thinking that way. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Mental health, what's that?
Right. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. It's good to see you. It's true. It's usually because there's a reason. So, Happy New Year. Good to see you.